Okay, we'd like to welcome you back to our current event and weekly Bible study for November 6, 2011. And it looks like this is just going to kind of turn into a dedicated study regarding these John Todd tapes. Obviously, my commentary is adding a lot to it, but hopefully enhancing what's being said here. And we're going to go ahead and continue with this part, Tape 6b, and we'll see what he has to say next. And then we're actually going to do another tape after this as well, if we can get that in.
Human sacrifice? That's pretty... Oh, well, the occasion was on a Sabbath, okay? That particular Sabbath happened to be February the 2nd, Candlemas, okay? What was the rest of it? Well, it's done, that particular one was done because of an initiation ceremony that was being done. Mine. But most of the cultists just practice 8 times a year if they're into blood sacrifice. The lower witches believe that the power for witchcraft comes from orgies and sex. The higher witches believe it's attained by human blood. Okay?
Russ, how many of you had your hand?
It's a revolution that they have planned within the United States. Most people feel that something like that will never happen in the United States. They're lying to themselves. It will happen, and it's not very far off. Well, by 1980, there'll be... Helter-skelter is only an excuse, okay? The excuse is to be able to declare martial law. That's the whole reason for it.
Now, remember, again, this is dated, and things were obviously pushed back regarding this particular agenda. But this whole helter-skelter thing, which, was the name of one of the songs, or, I don't know, probably several songs back then, had that in their lyrics, was essentially this mass revolution in America where the government then would have an excuse to impose martial law. Well, obviously we've heard a lot about that over the past years, and as we could be very, very, very much on the cusp of that right now. All it would really take is some false flag terrorist, nuclear event, a pandemic that they've created. You name it. There's a lot of different scenarios. But that was always been their ultimate goal, is to be able to impose martial law. And he was even letting us in on that even way back in 1977 and 78 period.
They promised the one side that they will be able to gain control of the United States through revolution, when the whole time is they're just simply setting them up to be able to declare martial law and suspend the Constitution. And by 1980, they plan on being under martial law. Now, I'm not saying, don't all of you start lynching me at one time. I didn't say it was going to happen. I said, this is their plan, okay? I'll leave it up to your own prayer life and watching the newspapers whether it's going to happen or not.
Maxine.
Just like most other cults, Jesus Christ requires just one way, only one way. The devil will use any way to keep your eyes off that one way, okay? And he uses the same tactics wherever it branches to. I have no idea if he came out after... Yeah. They were backing groups like him before, the Christianers and so on. I can't see much difference between them and those two groups, so they probably back him too.
Okay, Mike and then Bob.
Yeah, it's the Council of Foreign Relations. Yeah, and it's inner brainchild that runs this. It's called the Trilateral Commission. Okay?
Sally, Bob, and then Barbara.
Now, he just mentioned the Council of Foreign Relations, of which Rick Warren is a member. Rick Warren, the Pied Piper of the coming pseudo-Christian one-world religion. Okay, he's Council of Foreign Relations member, admitted. So, again, he's talking about this way back then, how that's all yoked up with the Illuminati.
Yeah, there's 7 principalities, about 200 powers. Then it starts getting down into lower people we never pay attention to, the lower spirits. Yeah.
Now, that's from his standpoint as a Luciferian. From his reference point.
I'm going to go just recently, about 3 weeks ago in April, the day before Jack Howes came to our church to speak, and the day after he left, both times I came walking out of the church at Faith Baptist. One time I got in my car, started to drive off in the parking lot, about 30 people were standing around, and a passing car opened up on us with a gun. And then, that was Sunday night. Then Wednesday night of that week, I was walking out into the parking lot prior to the church letting out with a couple of brothers. And when we dug the bullets out of where they hit, they had fired twice at us, and the bullets were .44 caliber, .44 Magnum. So they don't play around. And the range was...
In other words, he's going to church meetings and one on Wednesday, one on Sunday. They're firing bullets at him as he's coming out of the... This is how bad they wanted to stop his message. Okay, and obviously, there's multiple witnesses to this going on. So again, they did not want this information getting out at all.
So close, it was from the back of that wall to here. You know that the Lord is in it. It really makes you appreciate His divine protection, let me tell you. Bruce, that world takeover plan ended with World War III. But one of the teachings is that when Lucifer sets up his kingdom, okay, that through World War III, most of the civilized world as it exists now will be in rubble. The one protected capital that they have purposely kept all missiles away from both sides, is Jerusalem. And they plan on using Jerusalem to set up from there, okay? Do they believe that Adam's original home, or the Garden of Eden, rests where Jerusalem is? So that's going to rule from there.
Which would make sense. I mean, regarding World War III, most likely Jerusalem is going to be the main focal point, but it's not going to be a place that's ever bombed out of existence. I don't think God would let it happen from a biblical standpoint. I'm not going to say there's maybe no damage sustained regarding that, but the Muslims wouldn't want to bomb Jerusalem and damage the Dome of the Rock because that's their third most holy site in Islam. The Jews obviously would want to protect the Temple Mount, and so would the Christians. So the major religions of the world would have a kind of a vested interest in not damaging particularly where the temple's located because of its religious significance to multiple religions. So that would make sense, and just thought that was kind of interesting.
Mike and then Robin, we better let that maybe very quick.
The church that I attend, and a member of, is Faith Baptist in Canoga Park, Dr. Rasmussen. The work where it's at, the house, has got to remain a sound. Okay? Very well. All of our church walk around, people trying to find out where it's at, and everybody, shh. It's like the unspeakable secret. Okay? Everybody knows, but nobody says.
In other words, he had to maintain anonymity
He was
where
a
he was
member
at.
of the Process Church of the Final Judgment, which in California is called Universal Church Triumphant Summit International. They always like these names.
Okay, let's see. Randy?
Not anymore. I try to keep out of communication as much as possible with them. My foster mother has a huge contract on my life, and my brother's trying to collect it, so I try to stay away from them.
So in other words, they asked him, do you have any more contact with your parents? He's like, no. He says, my foster mother has a huge contract out on my life, and my brother's trying to collect it. Meaning he's trying to kill his brother because obviously, they want him dead. And ultimately, it appears as though they did get to him, and they did kill him eventually. And I'm not going to get into that information today. The information will be part of the PDF, though, that I post regarding this teaching for November 6, 2011. It'll all be in one PDF, and you can kind of access all the information at the same time.
By the way, Randy, you cannot communicate with them. You communicate with demons. They imitate them. They cannot speak to you. Let's see. Yes, brother.
You mean in counting all 8 Sabbaths they last year? From May 1st to May 1st, probably 500, and that's only a guess. I'm probably way under.
Dwayne has one of his books, Chick Publication, I believe it is, and it's made up like a comic book. It tells you here.
Broken Cross. That's the one I wrote.
This is the one that...
Okay, now again, and I just had a listener recently resend these to me. I had given them all out. Chick Publications had put out a lot of John Todd's work in that time frame, and still continue to put this out and use it as a reference tool for a lot of their writings. And the comic book series, a lot of those comic books that they've put out are based on John Todd's research, and, well, really not research, it was the life he lived. It was just basically that. So they can be a tremendous education tool regarding that particular subject. So let's go further.
One of the main methods of how they get victims to offer up in blood sacrifice. All right, Robin, I think we better let this be it.
Okay. Give me about a minute on this tip.
And I apologize for the audio quality. And remember, this is from like a church meeting from 1978. I'm really surprised it's as good as it is. But hopefully you've been able to hear John Todd and what he's been saying. And I will give you the links that you can go if you want to. Obviously, it's going to be a little bit cleaner if you listen to the actual right off the internet that I'm listening to. All the links will be available in the PDF for this teaching.
Okay, you heard at a Christian school. What one? Oh, high school. Okay. You heard that C.S. Lewis was a Christian, right? Okay. First of all, Christian Accelerated Schools has, what I'm about to tell you, have investigated what I said. Christian Accelerated Education, and because of it, are now ordering all their schools to ban Lewis's work. They checked into it very carefully. So did my pastor, because he was getting hit very hard with it. He found everything I said to be true. When a witch is ready to be initiated, she must not just read, but she must study the complete works of Lewis, fictional works. Lewis has said that the way to God is like a hallway with many doors. They all lead to him. Okay? Now, the fictional works of Lewis are very real to witches. They're not fictional, they're history to witches. They really believe them. Okay? They believe them.
So in other words, C.S. Lewis has said that, there's many, many paths to God, which is what the Bible teaches as a lie. Jesus Christ said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man cometh unto the Father but by me. That's it. Okay? So, when C.S. Lewis says there's many ways to God, well, that's what all the isms teach. Hinduism, Buddhism. So he's falling in line with that, proving he is a devil, essentially. And again, we've done a whole teaching, and I give you the links to the teachings I've done on C.S. Lewis in this PDF near the very beginning of this teaching.
Guidelines. Now, Lewis was a member of the Golden Dawn. Now, that's been proven. Along with a fellow brother of the same coven named Tolkien, who wrote The Hobbit. They were in the same time. Now, the Golden Dawn is the private church that the Rothschilds must pick every member of that church personally. It's in London. The oldest coven in the world. Okay? That's Lewis. Whether he says he's a Christian or not, that doesn't mean anything. That's where Christians are making their terrible mistake.
Could it be that he was like that, and like you said, he got converted, now he is no longer that?
He would have had to tell it. When Lewis' name was on the Golden Dawn records right up to the time that I got out. I mean, there's no betrayal there. He never did leave them. Okay?
So in other words, C.S. Lewis, who I said earlier, and I prove in the teachings that I did on Tolkien and C.S. Lewis, he was a member of the Order of the Golden Dawn, a very, very, very high-level Luciferian group. I mean, these guys are like the Masons on steroids. They were literally started, hand-chosen church by Rothschild himself. He never got out. John Todd said his name was on the member record up until the time that he got out. So, John Todd got out of the Illuminati. So, Lewis never did get out. He never recanted. And the man was extremely deceptive, evil tool of Satan.
I want to say something real quick that will answer this. Many people supposedly are getting saved from the Manson family and from other things. Let me tell you something real quick so there will be no misunderstanding. If you come out of the occult, you come out of the Masons, you come out of anything of the Illuminati, there's one distinct thing. Anywhere there's a vow of secrecy, that vow of secrecy must be broken. Not in part, complete. When somebody breaks their complete vow of secrecy, they're out. But until they do, they're not. Okay?
Charlie, this is it.
That's right.
Then a double what?
Witch's language. That's exactly right. Okay.
Did you hear his question? How do Masons relate to all of this?
Okay.
So how do the Freemasons relate to all of this whole grand scheme of the Illuminati, essentially?
Listen closely, you Masons.
Council 13 is the highest council in the Illuminati. The council right below it is the Council of 33. That's called the Grand Masters. There are the 33 highest Masons in the world. To be a member of the Council of 33, you must take a human life in a ceremony to prove your worthiness. We have in our hands copies, and Schick Publications is releasing this in their new book, Angel of Light. Copies of a 32nd, 33rd level book which proclaims Jesus Christ, the God of brutality and sin and evil, and Lucifer, the God of love, beauty, and peace, and the true God. Yeah, a little shocking, huh? Different from the way it's portrayed. But don't be mad at the lower Masons. It also says in the same book that the lower Masons are sheep to be sheared. Now, many Masons are getting saved through our message lower and higher, because they recognized when I didn't tonight, gave my initiation to become a witch, and my vow of secrecy is the same as theirs. All the way through, the same. No different. Now, Masons were started by the Illuminati. It's all through our history that they're tied with the Illuminati. Their rites are witchcraft rites, when witchcraft had to go underground. We've had people come in and tear up their membership cards and get right with the Lord. Mainly because, if you didn't know this, Charles Finney was a Mason, and when he got saved, he said, I can't be a Mason and be a Christian. It is impossible, because the vows I must take are non-Christian vows. Okay? People are getting saved right and left, and they all have one thing to say. When they leave the Masons, the reason they didn't leave before is they were afraid of what the Masons would do to them. Now, if it is a good group, why are people afraid to leave it?
Okay, so that's the end of the tape 6B. We're going to play one more tape from him, and I'm going to try to get this in before we run out of time here. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and start this last part here, and it's Todd explaining the Illuminati. Now, I might have played a portion of this in a previous clip, but again, this is kind of a dedicated study regarding this particular subject. So, here we go. Explaining the Illuminati.
Now, most people do not understand the Illuminati. How many people here have ever done any study on the Illuminati before they've heard of me? Okay. How many have done some since they've heard my tapes? A couple, okay. Boy, are the rest of you in for a surprise tonight. I don't want people to listen to me and walk out of here and just accept the things I have. I kind of like it when people go out here and say, boy, he's nuts. Because they'll go and they'll try and research to prove that I'm wrong. And the more they research, the more they start believing me. It is impossible to research history and to research the conspiracy and to research the Illuminati without coming away a solid believer. As the brother who prepared these, Brother Tom Berry, said he went through almost 2,000 books for 20 sheets of notebook paper filled with notes. That's how well it was hidden. How many people have a set of encyclopedias at home, a good set? So home tonight, look up the word Illuminati. In some of the encyclopedias, you will find that it existed but does not exist now. And in other encyclopedias, you will find that it existed and still exists now. But they don't tell you anything about it. Before we go into it, I want to give you a reading list, okay? Now, I want to explain a book before I give its title, and I want you to choose carefully as to whether you want it or not. I don't want you later getting mad at me because I recommended it. It is not a Christian book. It is not a political book. It is an Illuminatus book. The book was ordered, written, and produced by Philip Rothschild, the leader of the Illuminati in this day and age. It was ordered, written by a woman named Anne Rand, and she was at that time one of Philip Rothschild's mistresses. It was written some 12 years ago. She was already a well-known author, and her books sell nationwide. Mostly people who read them are communists. And she wrote this book. It was supposed to be a novel. It's 1,100 pages, so if you don't like to read, don't buy it. And it was written as a novel, supposedly, but it is a code book. And within the book is a step-by-step plan to take over the whole world by taking over the United States. Now, I'm going to say many things tonight that a lot of people will try and go out of here and say that I'm anti-American. No, I'm extremely pro-American. I couldn't be that until I became a Christian. But I'm extremely pro-American. I am just anti-government that exists within America today, because it is not the government of the people any longer, and I'm pro-people government. That's a term misused by communists a lot. I'm sorry if you're upset that I use, but that's exactly what it says in the Constitution. Oh, this is what I've been waiting on. I'm glad he brings it. I know what's in it. Wouldn't be the first time. Now, the power of the Illuminati, and I'll give an explanation. The Illuminati is as following. Okay, first, most people have found the Illuminati in things that have crossed their path. People have found it in the occult, and mistakenly they have said, aha, the Illuminati is the occult. Then they have found it in the Masons, and they said, aha, the Illuminati is the Masons. Then they have found it in politics. They said, oh, it's politics. So they found it in the international banking system. Or they found it in Zionism. So they list it as just being that. Actually, it is all these things and much more. They found it in the Mormon religion. That's because The leaders of the Mormon religion are high echelons in the Illuminati. They are founded in the John Birch Society. That's because the man who leads the John Birch Society is both a high-degree Mason and a Mormon. But it is all these things.
Now, I've had inquiries about the John Birch Society, and I can't say I've actually ever done any in-depth studies on them, but he's confirming here that the John Birch Society is totally infiltrated as well. So, just for your own edification.
And its power is finance. If you would take its finance away, which is impossible. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to tell you the name of the book, and I just realized that. I started out. I'm getting ahead of myself. The book is called Atlas Shrugged. Oh, Atlas, Atlas supposed to hold up the world? Shrugged, like you shrug your shoulders. Atlas Shrugged.
Okay, so the book by Ayn Rand called Atlas Shrugged is the blueprint for the Illuminati takeover of the United States, which is essentially going to transform into the takeover of the world. And I've also read that if you ever were to go into someone's house and there's a special edition of the Atlas Shrugged. I believe it's a gold embossed type of edition. If you ever see that on someone's coffee table, that is a signal to other high-level occultists in the know that they are, they're a member of this. I'm not saying they're a flat-out member of the Illuminati or high-ranking, but they're at a high enough level where they're actually part of the conspiracy that the Illuminati is a part of, or that the Illuminati has originated. So that's something just to think about. And let's go further.
Now, this is the warning that goes with it. I'll be talking about occult books tonight and how demons are in occult books and in their music and so on. This isn't so with this book. They didn't place a spell on this book because they did not want people to buy this book other than those told to buy it within the occult and within the Illuminati. They are extremely mad because just this year alone they sold several million of them, mostly to Christians, and they don't like that. In fact, they've tried to stop printing it, but people don't want to stop printing it. They're making so much money. The bad thing about it, though, is that...
And again, I don't know why a Christian would want to go buy a book like this, but it wasn't. The Christians weren't supposedly buying it because they were trying to expose what was going on. They were buying it to, read it. And again, then you can get into the whole genre of the Christian bookstores, which, the very vast majority of what you're going to get or buy in a Christian bookstore is garbage. And it's lukewarm, watered down, unbiblical opinions, or books that are filled with a lot of, let's say, part of it is biblically right on, and then another large part of it is biblically totally diametrically opposed to the Bible. And so you got to be real careful, what you're reading. You're not going to hear me recommend a lot of books to read or do this or to do that. I'm not saying that there's not good authors and there's not good books out there, but as inundated as I am with this ministry, and it's only really getting worse with email inquiries and requests, and if anybody emails me, please try to keep your emails as short as possible, because I'm getting to the point where I can't, one person can't do it. And it's as we've automated the email list and we've made it easier to sign up for the email list, it's to the point where I'm having a really tough time keeping up. And the thing I'm eventually going to have to make a decision on is, do I just stop the ministry totally in order to answer everybody's questions? Or do I do the opposite? Do I keep the ministry going, keep producing teachings, and sacrificing being able to, I want to be a servant, but there's only so much one person can do. So I would encourage everybody, if they're going to email me, to keep it as short as possible and to keep the emails to a minimum, because I'm trying to help a ton of people, and there's just no way I can delegate what I'm trying to do. I'm the only one that knows where a lot of these things are that maybe a particular person would need regarding a specific spiritual issue, health issue, as far as in my own computers, what I mean that way. So, anyway, I just thought I should mention that. Let's go further here.
Since it is written as a novel, it has some passages that I think might belong in Hustler or other places. Maybe out of 1,100 pages, you might count 5 that are this way. You can tear them out and throw them away. They're just stuck in there to hope they're stuck in there on purpose to keep Christians from reading the book. So if you should get to a passage that is a little something you shouldn't read, just turn to the next page. It'll be over by then, and you can go on with the story. Now, if you don't like to read, skip the first 200 pages. The first 200 pages is exactly the way most people in the world are. They're very boring.
Yeah, and again, I would never encourage anybody to read this book. It's just, listening, if you're listening to this particular ministry, you ought to have a pretty good enough idea about the agenda of the Illuminati, and what we're talking about today is a great example of that. You don't have to go and immerse yourself in this type of stuff. And I've known Christians that would go and research even a lot darker stuff, that's overt occult stuff. Helena Blavatsky and Alice Bailey, and literally buying their books and bringing these cursed books into their house. And then you see invariably this huge change in the person doing this, because you're literally bringing a cursed object into your house. It's going to affect your thinking process. There's demons connected with that you're literally inviting in when you bring those books in your house. So I wouldn't encourage, anybody to do that. If you wanted to know the synopsis of the book, you could probably just go online, and you could do this for almost all books written in this format, and just do like Cliff Notes, Ayn Rand, Atlas Shrugged. Give me the Cliff Note version. Give me the shortened, the abbreviated, the synopsis of the book. That would probably be much more appropriate.
No, actually, there's a conspiracy from people in all the walks of life talking about this incident happening and that incident happening, and it's very boring to the fact it lets you know that it's the conspiracy that's planning the incidents. It's like reading the newspaper today. You don't really know what's happening behind it. But after about the first 200 pages, 8 chapters, 9 chapters, something like that, it starts showing you that everything that is happening is conspired to happen. And I'm going to give all these things, and I want to say something before I give the rest of the reading list. The common name for the Illuminati is the conspiracy, or the Great Conspiracy. Now, until we lost the school system to people within the Communist Party and within the organization of the Illuminati and so on, you were taught in your history classes, and some people can remember this if they want to confess up to being that old, that history was taught that it happened because somebody conspired for it to happen. Then we didn't want in this nation anybody to get ideas that maybe our government was a conspiracy. So they decided to start teaching that it just happened because it happened. World War II happened just because some people got mad. World War I happened because some people got mad. The Depression happened because we bought too much too soon without enough money. They did not want anybody to get the idea that it all happened because somebody conspired for it to happen. But I hope to accomplish one thing tonight more than anything, that I will change your attitude, that I'll put new forms or patterns or whatever in your life, that you will walk out of here and when something happens you'll go, now I wonder what they're really up to.
In other words, the Great Depression, World War I, World War II, the coming World War III, the wars in between, Vietnam, Korea, these are not just things that happened by some circumstance. These were planned out. They were conspired. And the Illuminati is behind this stuff. And they have a tremendous amount of things to gain, more control over different companies or countries. The money's made off the supplying the bullets, the guns, the gas, the tanks to these wars. There's specific reasons why all of this stuff happens. And this is what he's trying to emphasize.
Really? Okay. And we'll be talking about a few things tonight. I want to start with
they're showing a picture here of George Bush, the first one, not Bush Jr., but Sr., and he's a member of the Skull and Bones, just like George Bush Jr. was as well. And they're showing his Skull and Bones picture of the Yale Skull and Bones, which is another high-level secret society. I mean, this stuff is common knowledge. I mean, if you search it out. I mean, our presidents, there's a huge percentage of them that were actually members of this particular very, very dark, very, very evil secret society.
Sheet. Now, there's something missing on the yellow sheet. I want you to draw a block. No, don't draw a block. I'm sorry. under the First National Bank Rights Federal Reserve Act, or the Federal Reserve Commission, FRC, FRA, whichever way you want to write it. You can abbreviate it or whatever you want to do. All right? Now, if you look at the pyramid, let's start with the one that says organization. Now, there's no way to preach a sermon when you're given a teaching like this. I'm going to play school teacher tonight. If some of you find it boring, you happened in the wrong meeting, because you might as well think that you're back in high school or going to college or whatever, because that's about what it's going to be like tonight. I'm going to give a lot of facts. I'm going to try and leave enough time that we can have some questions, because there's no way I can say all I'm going to say tonight without leaving some people in confusion. Pastor disappeared. Here he is. Did you turn that air conditioner on? It's hot in. No, I don't feel nothing. Can't put this many people in a building like this without starting something. Okay. Start with the one that says organization. And if you'll notice on all the pyramids, the first three blocks are exactly the same. Now, if you've heard my testimony, you know that I came from the Council of 13. Now, I want to stop, take about 3 minutes to explain the doctrine of the high part of the occult. The last 4 levels of the occult.
And again, as this video is playing, they're flashing up pictures, and they're showing Prescott Bush, which was the grandfather of George Sr. and George, well, actually the grandfather of George Jr., but the father of George Sr. I mean, they're showing him, and, you know, he was a member of the Skull and Bones. They all have been. And, you know, he worked hand in hand with a lot of the Nazis, had a lot of business dealings with them, these types of things. They're showing a picture here of George Bush Jr. and Kerry. They were supposedly running against one another. They were both members of the Skull and Bones, though. So again, this was all by design. The outcomes of the elections are all figured out ahead of time, and these types of things. It's very important to understand that. So,
are the last 3 levels of the occult, the 4th, 5th, and 6th level, and most of the modern cults today, particularly Mormonism, believe the same thing. How many people ever saw a movie called The Dunwich Horror? Nobody ever saw that movie. A couple people saw it. Okay? And I think Sandra Dee was the star of it or something. Okay. That was probably one of the strongest movies truthful about witchcraft and their beliefs that ever existed. Now, there was the original occult Bible, witchcraft Bible, was called the Necromonicon. There's only 3 copies in existence today. One is in the town in St. Petersburg Cathedral in the USSR. One is in New York City. No, I'm sorry. One is in Glasgow, and one is in London. I saw when it was on, the one from the London Museum was in New York for a while. I got to hold it and look at it, so I went up in the occult. Now, from that, the Book of Shadows, the occult Bible, came into existence. Several books have been written from the Necromonicon and are in many Christians' hands today, which we're hoping that will burn before it's over. Now, according to the Necromonicon, the beginning of the world happened at man or mortals. You watch the...
Okay, we're going to another part here now, part 2.
It's worse than no knowledge. All right? And in all of theirs, they stopped the Illuminati at the Rockefellers. They always are after David and Nelson and these type of people as the leaders of the Illuminati. They're not. Second, they also say that the Illuminati, and it's in many books, and I can prove it, and in many tapes, that the Illuminati is a Zionist conspiracy. And it is not a Zionist conspiracy. The learned elders of Zion, or the synagogue of Satan, that were Jews that believed that Lucifer was the true God, okay, existed before the Illuminati, and the Illuminati came, used their teachings to start the Illuminati, all right? But they're not Zionists. In fact, most of their leaders are Gaelic. The Rothschilds are Zionists by birth, but they quit believing in Yahweh hundreds of years ago. And Wyckoff had already left the Jewish church, had been a Catholic and a Satanist before the Illuminati was formed. And on, and they try to make...
Okay, so this is something that really comes up a lot. Okay, it's all a big Zionist conspiracy. And this is just more confirmation of that yes, there are Zionists part of the Illuminati conspiracy, but to blame everything on the synagogue of Satan, the Bible talks about, they call themselves Jews, but they are the synagogue of Satan in Revelation. Yes, They play a big part, but they're not the only part. It's not just some only Zionist conspiracy. He was saying that these people, the majority of them, were actually Gaelic. And it's a global conspiracy comprised of all the races of the world. There may be preponderances of particular ethnic groups, but you just can't say it's one big Zionistic conspiracy and blame everything. And then what a lot of times people do is then they want to blame everything on the Jews, and they throw the baby out with the bathwater, and they just focus in on the Jews, and they're the source of all evil, and this and that. That's come up so many times. I don't know. I've done several teachings where I've talked about that. So I think it's important. And here's somebody that would know. Now, he talked about using the word, they don't believe in Yahweh. I don't use that word. I flat out do not use that word. We're talking about a subject here called the Tetragrammaton. I've done a study on that that you need to key in, and it's the sacred name movement thing. You really need to get educated on that because that is a very important issue. And if you've just never looked into the actual source of that movement, you really need to. Because a lot of people think that they're more holy or they're better because they're supposedly using the real Hebrew name of God. And you need to get educated regarding that particular subject. Because if you realized how many witches would be right there in lockstep with you, arm in arm with you, using that word, you would be absolutely appalled. And I give you all the documentation in the PDF to that particular study. I've never had anybody refute it. And that's very important, because it's very important you're calling upon the right name. You know? If you're calling on the wrong name, and in calling out and trusting in a name that's false, that's going to affect your relationship with God. So I'm going to go ahead and put that teaching as a link near the top of the study, so you can click on that if you want to know more about that as well.
Rockefellers and everybody at one time a Jew, and everybody's changed their names to hide they're a Jew, and all the Jews are the evil people, and they lead the Illuminati. Well, I have news for them. I sit on the Council of 13 that runs that organization, and my family's never been a Jew. They're all from Scotland. So something's wrong in the translation somewhere. And I cannot believe that a member of the Council of 33, the second highest council within the Illuminati, can run an organization that exposes the Illuminati. It just doesn't make sense. And the other strongest thing, we'll let that one go. That's a little too strong for anybody around here. But all I can say is that the Birch Society is like the Masons. Now, I'm going to hit another group here. You're not going to like it. We've got some people here, but hear me out before you all want to lynch me at one time. It's like the Charismatics. And that's because the people, the little people, it's just like, okay, like the coal miners, and like the farmer strike, and like the Teamsters. You've got the people in it below who do not know who its leaders are. Okay? Now, where I sat, I had to hand money to people. Okay? And when I come out, people wonder, why are you mad at these people? These people are good men of God. Why are you mad at them? How would you feel if you had to take millions of dollars in checks and currency and dispose it to these people to do things for the Illuminati? Would you respect them as Christians? That's the idea.
He's talking about the millions of dollars he gave directly to the charismatic movement and its leaders. You go back to where the charismatic movement started at Azusa Street. Do you know how many demonic manifestations took place there? Well, isn't that the modern day, equivalent of its origin? I mean, isn't that where the charismatic movement pretty much started? I mean, they pretty much admit to that. The thing I have to ask is that if it's so holy and if it's so biblical and if it's so of God, why didn't it continue all the way from the apostles all the way up until now. Why was it that it had to start somewhere in the last 100 years, less than 100 years? Wouldn't it have always continued? Wouldn't it, you see an unbroken? No, it started then. Oh, in the Laodicean church era, when things have become so leavened and so defiled. And since, the churches have started to, yoke up with the government, their 501c3 status, since we've started using all these false Bible versions that were originally spawned in 1881 through Westcott and Hort, two high-level occultists, that gave us the revised version that literally spawned all the false Bible translations that we have today that have been leavened. And you're telling me that there's, you look at the origin of the Azusa Street. You look at what they admit to went on there. It was not of God. It was not of God. It could not be of God. Well, yeah, but there was some. But look at all the good that came. Yeah, I'm looking. I came out of it. I've been there, done it. The whole 9 yards. And I'm not saying there's not some very sincere people in it, but I'm telling you, you better take a good look at that. You better take a good look at that. I could do study after study after study on all of the wickedness and false ministers that have come out of that movement, and I have. I mean, they're legion, essentially. So he's just confirming it right here. He was giving hundreds of thousands of dollars is his position in this over this 13-state region to leaders in the charismatic movement, and this is when it started. Now, I've done studies on Benny Hinn and Catherine Kuhlman and Amy Sumble McPherson and just the documented wickedness that went on there. And you could just keep going on and on and on. Kenneth Copeland, the 20 hours of footage that one of my listeners got put up for me recently on the tapes that I had sent him on where they were slowing down the tongues and they were actually backmasking some of the tongues. And the Kenneth Copeland, Kenneth Hagin, Rodney Howard-Browne. Really, after watching that 20 hours, the only conclusion I could come is that these people weren't just deceived, they were Satanists. Well, wouldn't that kind of line up with what we're hearing here, that these people were taking literal payoffs? They were literally groomed and inserted into these movements? Everything, all the dots connect. All the dots connect.
Yes. Too much money went into the Birch Society from the Illuminati for me to believe that it's an instrument against the Illuminati.
See, too much money went into the Birch Society, the John Birch Society, for him to believe that it's an instrument. See, people would say, well, why would they want to do this? Because they want to control all sides of an issue. Just like the Democrat, Republican. They own both sides, but they act like they're warring against one another. No, they create these things so that they can control them from the inside out.
Okay. I saw $35 million in 2 years go into the charismatic movement to build the 4 biggest churches in the United States that lead it.
$35 million. So this was back in the early 70s, go into the charismatic movement to build the 4 biggest churches in the United States that lead the charismatic movement. And he was personally there when the money was changing hands.
Plus the full gospel businessmen. I saw $20 million given to Demos Securian one night. I can't accept it. Okay?
I'm not a member of the John Birch Society, nor a defender, nor particularly excited about the John Birch Society. I would say for the record's sake, because I had contact with him, documented the Illuminati all the way through Rochester.
Okay. Let me catch you up a minute. I wasn't going to give it, but I'm going to go ahead and give it. Some of its biggest people, like the man you mentioned and Gary Allen, have both stood up and just literally ripped by name the Baptist Fundamental Church apart. And have you ever seen the Blue Book of the Birch Society? No.
Now, this man had asked a question about the Birch Society. He said he wasn't an actual member, but he's almost there like he's kind of defending them. And so this is John Todd's response to that.
Christian can read that book and say that book is a Christian book. All right? And I've heard them stand up and say they're fools in the fundamental church. Okay? No, cannot in any way. So let's pass over that one. I hit that, and I also hit a dozen other things at once. I'm going to get lynched by 3 different groups before I get out of here.
But let me interject something, please.
Yeah.
Let's hold our questions to one per person.
Yeah, really.
We've got about 400 folks in here
And
tonight.
everybody wants to ask a question. After what I just said about the charismatic.
So there's about 400 people in this church he's in, and obviously the stuff he's saying is going to be stepping on a lot of toes in the average church. So you can imagine, it'd take a lot of courage to do what he's doing, to go into these churches and to start bringing out this type of information. It was probably like, these people were probably in total shock at what they're hearing.
I know they're going to want to.
So let's limit them just to one question.
What's a charismatic? Okay. A charismatic, let's put it this way, a charismatic movement, the charismatic movement to the outside people is the movement that declares the speaking of tongues. Okay? That is separate from the Pentecostal denominations and churches. Most people do not realize that the Pentecostal churches are not part of the charismatic movement. In fact, many of them oppose it. Alright? The charismatic movement...
How true that is now, I have my serious doubts. I really believe that from my experience in both the Pentecostal and the charismatic, that they're pretty much different flavors of the same movement. Okay, that's been my experience. And I can't imagine it's gotten better since I've left.
In reality, was one of 3 steps declared back in 1964 to do 2 things. Well, the main function was to destroy the fundamental church of any type.
So the charismatic church, the goals when the Illuminati literally backed it, funded it, and created it was to destroy the fundamental Bible-believing church. Period. That was one of the main goals of the charismatic church.
All right? The Masons was one, and the charismatic church was another, okay? And then the political maneuvers was the third. Now, most people, they get caught up in the charismatic movement. They don't stand back and watch it. It has 2 distinct signs wherever it goes. If it isn't a fundamental church, it splits it every time. I've never seen any fundamental evangelical church say the same after it came there. And the other thing it does is it unites all the liberal churches. It has brought the Catholics, the Lutherans, and the Mormons, even the Mormons, the Methodists, the Episcopalians, Presbyterians, everybody together. Now I'm going to make some quotations.
So this is the fruit of the charismatic church. When it comes into a fundamental Bible-believing church, it splits it every time, because there's always going to be a sect of people that say, no, this is not right. This is not done in decency and in order. The Bible says to lay hands suddenly on no man. That's something they're famous for. Just come around laying hands on everybody. It's a great way to impart devils and demons. It's not done in decency and in order. Most of the things that go on in a charismatic church, I can vouch for that. It's chaos. And the people, so it's going to split churches. And then what it's also doing is uniting liberal denominations. When I came out of the charismatic church, I was teaching a Bible study. I believe it was on Tuesday nights. I was basically doing it in conjunction with the blessing of the charismatic church I was at. And it was a big one. I think it was the biggest building in the city that I was in, literally. And I was teaching a Bible study on Tuesday nights, and we had anywhere from 15 to 40 people showing up at this house. And I can remember distinctly that there was a charismatic Catholic man that came there pretty much every week. And when I started this is when I started getting wised up to, the truth of the King James Bible. And I can remember when I came there, here I am thinking, well, this is really weird. We got a Catholic in here, and we're all charismatics, and there's no problems here. And the whole tongues movement is a tremendous way to unite people, because it's based a lot on, emotions, and really it's based on emotions. And what ends up happening is a lot of people that may be in different denominations, if they can get on the same page when it comes to tongues, then all of their other little differences end up vanishing. But the first time that I went in there and I actually started saying anything or tried to help this guy regarding the Catholic Church, because I knew that that was a false religion, he was gone. He was gone. He didn't, you can say anything crazy regarding charismatic church, but the moment that I said anything or gave him any type of information to get him out of the bondage of the Catholic Church, he didn't want to hear it. But anyway, so I do have some experience with this.
I'm not a charismatic, I admit it. But I'm not a Baptist either, so don't say I'm saying it because I'm a Baptist. I'm against it. I'm against it for one reason. I was on the Council of 13 and had to pay too many millions of dollars out to that organization to accept that it be of God and its leaders, since I know most of its leaders by first name basis. They used the charismatic movement to establish...
So he knew the leaders of Charismania and of really the modern day corporate 501c3 church system at large, I would imagine, in America. They were all on the take. They were all being paid off. Whether they were Luciferians or whether they were just paid to be in that position, I don't know. They're still selling their soul to Satan. So how could he have any respect for them? Because, it was all a lie. I'm sorry if this information is shocking, but it confirms everything I've ever researched. It's not just like I'm listening to John Todd for the first time. This is confirming everything I've ever studied over the last 15 years. So, again, it's not just, I believe, his opinion. It's based in fact. He just happens to have a vantage point that most of us, thank God, never had.
Jesus Rock. I had to deliver a $4 million check that was the second $4 million check that Chuck Smith, that created Calvary Chapel and Maranatha Productions, received from the Illuminati.
Okay, here we go again. Chuck Smith takes a $4 million check, had everything to do with creating Jesus Rock, which is what we just talked about in the previous teachings. Here is Chuck Smith and that Lonnie Frisbee guy at the very, very forefront of that, and here the Illuminati is paying $4 million checks in order to make sure that happens, because they knew the power that would have to destroy true Bible-believing churches.
And he knew it was Illuminati money before you go out of here and say that he didn't. The purpose of it was...
In other words, Chuck Smith knew it was Illuminati money. Okay? So make no... he's innocent. Come on. $4 million?
To build Maranatha Industries and Productions, which started Jesus Rock. Back when the Christian church was preaching against rock music, not knowing why, but preaching against it just the same, and throwing it at the churches, that scared the Illuminati and the occult world to death. At that time, they almost thought their end had come. Because if that really happened within the Christian church would have the biggest mass revival of souls in the United States that this world has ever seen. That's the purpose for rock music, to make sure that never takes place. Now, okay, let me finish all this, because it's long. Before any hands come rushing up. When that took place, they got scared. So they got smart. They thought, and they built Jesus Rock. And you can take some of the top Jesus Rock songs, and you can play the same rock songs over here, and it's the very same tune with new words stuck in. Now I want to give you a key that witches know about. Okay? The sign of the devil's music, as they say of Lucifer's music, is not the words. It's the music. The power is in the music. The sign of Christian music is not the music. It's the words. That's why one song written by a group will catch on and will bless Christians' hearts, and others won't. Have you ever wondered why the Gaithers are the number one group in the United States? It's not because they sing great. It's because the songs they write and the power in those songs. Now, I know from being in the occult world the power in music. And I'm saying all this because I was the leader of Zodiac. I was going to get on this, and I'm still taking care of yours at the same time. By somebody asking me about rock music, but I'll do it this way. The thing about rock music was I was the leader of Zodiac Productions, which is the conglomerate agencies and production of concerts in the United States. Almost 95% of the groups that you hear in concert belong to contract to Zodiac Productions. Most of the friends that I have that are still in the world are friends that I met in the rock industry of people whose albums you buy today. Okay? The Illuminati doesn't produce rock music to entertain you. They don't produce rock music to make money. They don't need that money. They own everything anyway. They do it to put demonic influence in your life. The music is a spell, and every witch knows it. That's why when somebody's saved out of the occult, and they say, I've been saved, Pastor, what do I do? The pastor will go, well, burn everything that has to do with the occult. That's all the pastor says. And they'll bring in their rock records. Nobody has to tell them to do it. They were in witchcraft. They know what rock music is. Now, kids, I'm going to get you with this. Parents, don't pray that your kids throw out the rock music. It doesn't belong to them. It belongs to you. You are the head of the house, and although you think it belongs to them, according to God's word, everything in that house is yours. And you are the one that will face Jesus and say why you had it. The problem with Christians, particularly in a Baptist church, is that they don't realize that there's two judgments coming. One for the lost and one for the saved. Some people to wonder about some things. And this is all...
What he's in reference to is the great white throne judgment, which is where the unsaved will be judged and then cast into the lake of fire. And then there's the judgment seat of Christ, which is for all believers. So they're two different things, but they are two separate judgments.
In this book that was written 12 years ago, and in the book, they gain control of the world by bankrupting their own businesses. The Illuminati owns most, I would say 99 9/10 of the stores that you walk into and shop and the gas stations you go to. And they are going to destroy them on purpose. They are in the process of buying up over the last few years all the stores they don't own. They bought up grants and they bankrupted. They just bought up two guys and you can watch for them to go out of business. And they keep in business the ones that they've always owned, and they are going to bankrupt them before long and cripple them and destroy them. And the idea of taking over is to bankrupt the whole world where nothing is of any value and the currency does not exist anywhere, and then come back and solve all the problems. I heard
Again, we could be right on the cusp of this. There's nothing backing our money. They print it out of thin air. And again, if they devalue our money to nothing, then it doesn't matter if you've got $2 million or if you've got everything in an IRA or mutual funds or whatever, or even silver certificates or gold certificates. You need to take physical possession of that. Because if they pull the plug on this, now remember, the Illuminati has their seals on the back of the $1 bill. Okay? They can pull the plug on this anytime they want, and your money's not going to be able to buy anything. It's like the Weimar Republic or those types of things where you could use a wheelbarrow full of the money, which basically becomes like monopoly money, totally worthless, to buy a loaf of bread. So that's something to think about there. Let's go further.
Gaithers, which are my favorite group, recently on a record in live concert. The guy was talking about the energy crisis. He says it's funny. It doesn't matter if it's Republicans or Democrats. They get elected, they cause us problems, and then solve them so it looks like they're doing something. Now that's about the way it really is. And the book in Atlas Shrugged ends with the hero, John Galt, which is really Philip Rothschild, lifting his hand up in the air and drawing the symbol of his organization. It never says Illuminati in the book. In the air it says, we shall follow this symbol back. And the symbol that he draws is that. Can everybody see it from where you're at? The dollar sign. Now the dollar sign is only used in America, by the way. Nowhere else to represent money. It's almost 8,000 years old, or probably older. It goes back, you can find it in the pyramids. And it means to scourge or to punish, and through punishment to purify and make right. That's what it means. Funny that that's what we symbolize their money.
It's actually an occult symbol as well. I try not to use it, even if I email somebody back or in writings. I try not to use that sign. It's actually a wicked sign, the dollar sign.
Now, the Rothschilds lead the Illuminati, And in every country, they have a family, with the head of that family being the head of the Illuminati. In the United States, we have the Rockefellers. David Rockefeller is the head of both the Council of Foreign Relations and the Trilateral Administration or Council, which is the name of the Illuminati within the United States. And there's more blocks in these things and more blocks in the pyramids, but we have placed the main blocks that would interest America. And the main source of finance for the Illuminati and the whole world, but particularly in the United States, is the Standard Oil Company. Now, I'm going to educate you about something tonight that the Illuminati hoped nobody would ever find out about. Of course, you can check out who owns Standard Oil. That's David Rockefeller. He's the owner of Standard Oil. Now, when we were in the Illuminati, we had to learn the hieroglyphics of the Illuminati, and we had to go and shop at the stores that the Illuminati mark their stores by. Of course, they own almost everything, but their main businesses they mark. And Standard Oil is the conglomerate that owns almost everything. If I'm going to tell you the things they own, you're not going to believe what they own. It's that astonishing. If I ask most people today, besides Standard Oil, in fact, I'm going to, what would you say was the number one conglomerate within the United States? Anybody, tell me. Besides Standard Oil. Sears? That's Standard Oil. General Motors, that's the one I was waiting on. Standard Oil owns General Motors. They own Ford. They own American Motors. They own Chrysler. Now, you'll see Federal Department stores down here. Federal Department stores is Sears, Kenny's. A man very close, very powerful in the Illuminati, doesn't live too far from here, that owns all the Federal Department stores. Lives in Columbus. His name is Lazarus. Now, Lazarus owns Federal Department stores. Federal Department stores owns Gold Circle. They own Kresge's, which owns Kmart. They own just about every department store in the United States. Globe, Ontario, so on. They own Woolworths, which owns Wilco's. But Standard owns Mobil, and Mobil owns Montgomery Ward's. You get the message? Now, you can find out what Standard owns because they mark their signs with blue and red, everything they own. They also, in all of their oil companies, mark their oil companies with occult symbols. The main symbol is the sign of their god, the five-pointed star. Now, and the strongest version I've ever seen of it is the five-pointed star radiating rainbow colors, because they know that Lucifer is the god of the rainbow, as they put it. And if you'll read Ezekiel 28, you'll find out he does kind of radiate like a rainbow. He's covered with different colored jewels and so on. And this thing, they have snorkel with the arrow through it because that's the sign of casting a spell, the arrow. They use 76 because May 1st, 1776 is their birth date of the Illuminati. They use the sign of what witches practice in, this magic circle. When they write mobile, they write everything in blue, but they leave the circle in red. Most people don't even notice that there's a difference. The winged horse in Marathon, Pegasus, is the messenger of the god. It goes on.
Which is now Mobile. Mobile took that over, evidently, in the winged horse Pegasus. These are all high. I mean, Texaco, my word. You got the red and black, and then you've got the five-pointed star, and then you've got the, I believe it's called a Tau cross, being the T in Texaco going through that. I mean, you could I could sit here and do a study on the wickedness of all of these major companies, particularly the oil companies. Anyway, let's go on.
On Holiday Inn is the star with the rainbows, and you just go on and on. The eightfold path of what a witch must master to be a powerful witch is the symbol of Denny's. That's owned by them. So I see that they've got Sears separate from Federal Department stores. They really shouldn't. Shell Oil was the last oil company to go, and Queen Julianne, which is a member of the 500 here, and her husband, Prince Bryden, and Philip Rothschild own 90% of Shell Oil. Gall doesn't bear occult signs because it's owned by British Products, but British Products is owned by the Illuminati. Barzios is owned by the Mafia that's controlled by the Illuminati. I don't know why Union 76 is separate because it's a member of Standard Oil. But this will give you an idea. And First National...
I think what he had done at the start of this particular seminar this night, he's given out a chart, this yellow sheet of paper, that has a lot of this listed. So we're not actually able to look at what they're looking at, but he's going off that sheet.
Bank is doing a new thing now. They're putting out 13 circles on their buildings with all the emblems of the Illuminati on them. I guess they want lots of power. They've used the 13 plus the I and plus different things and so on. Chase Manhattan Bank and Bank America are both owned by the Rockefellers. First National is owned by the Dows and the DuPonts and the Kennedys. And the Federal I am cracking up. I told you, right, Federal Reserve Act is on there. I'm not even looking tonight. The Federal Reserve Act, most people think is a section of the United States government. It is not. The Federal Reserve Act is a stockholder-owned company. It's illegal. It's against the Constitution of the United States, but nobody dares oppose it. Now, what most people don't realize is the Constitution says Congress will set our weights and measures and the values of our dollar. But the Federal Reserve Act does that. Now, the Federal Reserve Act was pushed through by Woodrow Wilson, the first Illuminati president since Thomas Jefferson. And he was smart. He adjourned everybody to go home for the Christmas holidays.
Now, notice he said Thomas Jefferson. He was the first Illuminist president. Woodrow Wilson. He's the one that brought in the Federal Reserve Act in 1913, which was just absolutely unbelievably horrific thing that happened there, and he's just further verifying that.
Yeah, 55 congressmen and senators back that belonged to the Illuminati. This was back before they ran Congress. And before that everybody could get back, he adjourned Congress, and they passed the Federal Reserve Act. You see, now they do it in a different way. They own everybody. Now, I want to say a couple more things, and then we're going to go into some things here.
So, in other words, back then they didn't quite own everybody. Now they just own everybody, but the Federal Reserve Act came in and did that, and that's when they essentially started, or that was the modern-day advent of just basically being able to print money out of thin air. We went off the gold standard in 1933 totally, and then really off the silver standard. I believe 1969 was the last year they actually put silver, any 40% silver, in some of the coins, I think $half and dollars, and so nothing's backing the money at all now.
On those signs, and then we're going to take questions. If you'll take up this blue sheet that says Illuminati plan for world takeover. All right. Look for, it says Democratic president gets laws enacted. They're talking about JC. The first law that the Illuminati has, but they have not got passed yet, the number one law they want passed is called the Dow Gun Act. The Dees Gun Act. It's penned by Isaac Bonowitz, which you'll find on the Council 13 list there, but it's supposed to really be penned by Martin Dees, who led Jimmy Carter's campaign, and is head of the National Handgun Control Center in Atlanta, Georgia. Now, most people don't know how important it is that we not lose our constitutional right to own a gun. The Illuminati will never be able to start helter-skelter, which is on this thing, and you can read about it later, unless they can convince the people that they're not going to have to go from door to door fighting their way down the street as they burn and kill and rape and everything else. So they have promised them there'll be nothing existing in the form of guns in anybody's hands within the next year and a half. Now, I think that...
And again, this obviously did not happen. And if anything, since Obama took office, private gun ownership has went through the roof. So to a certain extent, you know, they've I guess shot themselves in the foot, no pun intended, regarding this particular issue. But it always has been a very, very major thing that the Illuminati has been concerned about.
That's where the Illuminati is going to have a little problem, because they had counted on passing the same law in Massachusetts as the test law, and they lost it. The law would have gave the National Guard the right to come into your home and the state police without a search warrant and search for your guns and confiscate them and arrest you if you had not turned them in within 60 days of the passing of the law. They thought that since Massachusetts was the strongest anti-gun state in the nation, and since Ted Kennedy supposedly wrote the bill himself, it would get passed. What were they in for a shock? It lost by a landslide, almost 3-1. And that is throwing them fear that maybe that same law would not be passed in the United States. Now, the other laws remove tax exemption from churches, House Bill 41 I spoke of when I was here before. By the way, did they pass that bill here? That one you were fighting, 1441 overall? They did pass it? They passed it? It was about tax or something here. They didn't come to vote? Okay. Now, 41, I understand, has been passed by now, at least by my information of what I can get. And it is supposed to poll the tax exemption from churches not belonging to the World Council of Churches or not having memberships of 500. And then, or what it doesn't say it's a poll, and it says that you must go to court and prove that you should stay tax deductible, and you'll spend a couple $1 million in court, so it's not worth battling. Then,
but notice the trap. The trap is the 501c3 tax deduction. Oh, so your parishioners can write it off on their taxes for their income tax. Another wicked system that's been implemented. Not which one dime goes running this country. And that was proven when Reagan was even in office, when the Grace Commission came in and found that not one dime of what you pay into the income tax system goes into running this country. Not one dime. So we're taxed in so many different ways that, I mean, you could do several part study just on all the different ways we're taxed every day. And but when taxes are talked about, it's as though the income tax is the only one that counts, which is essentially the whole income tax system is essentially a privately owned debt collection service for the International Monetary Fund, which was essentially all part of this Federal Reserve Act of 1913 to totally bankrupt the country and devalue the dollar and put us all in slavery. So, let's go further.
Those that keep their status, all except those belonging to the the National Council of Churches denominations, which leaves out Independent Baptists, by the way, all except them, no other exemption. You will have your name, your address, your phone number, just people coming in, let's keep on, printed in every post office in the United States. Plus, you may have an IRS audit without any reason, just because you gave such a thing. This is what the bill's about. The next is the Genocide Act. Now, this law was defeated 8 years ago, and it's up for vote again in about, 3-4 weeks. Now, it will send you to the federal penitentiary if you convert somebody from the faith that they were born into. I don't mean born again into. It's a copy of a law in Egypt that you must leave everybody alone to their own faith. That means if you convert a Mormon, a Catholic, a Southern Baptist, something like this. Nobody laughed on that one. If you convert somebody from another faith, even if they're over 21, their parents may press charges against you and have you indicted, not for conversion of somebody, catch this, for genocide. And you'll stand trial, not for some misdemeanor, but for murder. That's right. And that one is
Now again, these are laws that they've wanted to bring about for a long time. Obviously, they haven't been able to implement them yet, but it is a look into the brave new Orwellian world that is to come. And this way, they could snuff out any type of evangelism, particularly converting to Bible-believing Christianity.
Being pushed through. The next is the Presidential Martial Law powers. It's called the Martial Law Act. It's already been passed. I think it was passed last November, signed, enacted in law. Now, I want to say something. If you haven't heard about these, that's because you typically do something that the Illuminati counts upon. Now, people, I'm going to try and change your life with this. When Congress is arguing over something about a law that they're going to pass or something they're going to do or somebody they want to fire or get rid of, start digging and find out what they're really doing that you're not hearing on the television. The only time Congress or the government argues or does publicity about anything they're doing is when they don't want you to know what else they're doing. It's a smokescreen. When they fired, I can't even think of his name now, that guy that was on President Carter's committee and so on, when they fired him, they passed the Martial Law Act. Oh, you weren't looking. Right now, they passed House Bill 41 and they're trying to pass the genocide.
Okay, so that's all we're going to play for today on these tapes. I just heard these this week and really felt as though there was a lot of information that was very pertinent to the days and times we're living in. Just yet one more source of confirmation regarding a lot of the issues we've talked about in times past. There are more tapes that I can cover, and we'll kind of see. I'm going to probably listen to some of them and just try. There's a lot of redundancy in a lot of the tapes from John Todd on the internet, so I don't want to cover the same information over and over and over again. I think we were able to pretty much stay on track today regarding that, and we'll just kind of see. I'm going to go through some more of these this week and see if there's any other information that we might want to cover. So I'll go ahead and close this out in a word of prayer. Heavenly Father, we do thank you for this day and this time you've given us. I praise you, Lord God, for your goodness and your mercy that you bestowed upon us. We pray most of all and thank you so much for the Lord Jesus Christ, for his salvation, for his finished work on the cross of Calvary, Lord God. In the name of Jesus Christ, I pray that if there's anyone listening to this tape that's not saved, that you'd save their souls, Father God, that you would give them eyes to see, ears to hear, and hearts to receive, that you would direct them to the salvation tab at the start of the Contending for Truth, near the top of the contendingfortruth.com website, or whatever method, Lord God, else that you would use to get them saved. I do pray that you'd forgive us for any and all sins we've committed as we forgive those who have sinned against us, that the words of our mouth and the meditations of our heart would be pleasing and acceptable in thy sight, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer, that you would cleanse us from presumptuous sins and secret faults, that they would not have dominion over us, and that your name would be glorified through the body of Christ, through my listeners, through this ministry, and that many would be saved as a result of the efforts that you would work through us. And we ask all these things in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ, we pray. Amen.